What's up, everybody? How are you guys doing tonight? Pretty good? Pretty great. That's awesome. Has it been a pretty good week this week? Put your thumb up if it's been a good week. Thumb down if it's not been a good week. Thumbs up, thumbs down. Thumbs down? Oh, no. Middle? What about you guys? Good week? Bad week? 2 thumbs up. That's great. Wow. What about you? Good? Hey, don't throw that trash can, Prince. Come on, man. What about you guys over here? Thumbs up, middle, down? Down? Oh, I'm sorry. 2 thumbs up. Thumbs up. Testing wasn't too bad today? No, not too bad. Guys, who is still taking CMAS testing? A lot of you. That's a bummer. Wait, thumbs up, middle, down. How are we over here? Down. Bad day. Good day. All right day. Middle day. That's great. Well, I'm glad you guys are all here tonight, and I hope you found your way to a seat at some point. That would be great. Tonight, we're kicking off this new series, and tonight I brought some things from my house. Actually, this rock's not from my house. I just kind of found it, but it's a pretty cool rock, and I brought my, what's this thing called? What's the word? It's a bucket, but it's a type of bucket. Sand bucket. Sandcastle bucket. There we go. I brought my sandcastle bucket with some of my sand from my sand pit. But I brought these because we're going to be talking about them tonight. We're going to be using those. But when I pulled this out, and once I remembered the word, sandcastle bucket, I was thinking about some sandcastles. Who's built a cool sandcastle in their life? Has anyone? Okay, some of you. How many of you have never been to the beach, like to the actual ocean? You've never seen the ocean? Wow, that's crazy. That's actually less people than I would have expected, because we live in Colorado and there's no oceans here, if you didn't know. Did you know that? Are you guys having a hard time finding a seat back here? Oh, we're doing some push-ups. That's wonderful. It's wonderful. Are we good over here, friends? We're doing good? That's good. That's good. So, if you've never been to the beach, it's pretty cool. You should make it there someday. If you can't make it there, honestly, the mountains are cooler, so you're in a better place anyway. But if you do make it to the beach, you might take one of these and you might build a sandcastle. So those of you guys who have built a sandcastle, you know what I'm talking about. If you've never built a sandcastle, you probably still know what I'm talking about, because sandcastles are pretty cool. One time when I was 7, how old? 7. Nice, you're listening. Good job. One time when I was 7, I was in Florida. Who's ever been to Florida? Raise your hand if you've been to Florida. Okay, Florida is like, it's all right. It's not the best. It's all right. Florida is cool. And I was in Florida with my family, and we were there, and we were having a good time. We were hanging out at the beach, okay? So I was 7 years old. The best thing to do when you're 7 years old is to go hang out at the beach, right? Guys over here, you're being so loud I can't even hear myself think. It's crazy. So let's chill out. Very good, very good. So I was 7. I was at the beach. And me and my dad were building sandcastles, okay? We had like some of these buckets, and we had some smaller ones, we had some bigger ones. And we were building the craziest sandcastles ever. We spent the whole day, like we showed up early morning after breakfast, and then we were just building these sandcastles until like it started to get dark, right? We had been building this thing for hours. And at the end, honestly, I don't even know if a castle would count it like justice. It was like an empire. We had built like all these massive towers. I had built like tunnels into it. I had put like a moat around it. For a 7-year-old, this was better than like Disneyland, which we also might have went to, I think, that trip. But this was better because I had built the most epic sandcastle ever. My dad, he's really like kind of like artistic and detailed, so he like carved things into it. It was the dopest sandcastle you can imagine, right? Imagine like those like crazy ones. Have you ever seen like those competitions where they do crazy stuff? In my mind, as a 7-year-old, it looked like that. It probably didn't actually look that cool, but it was a great sandcastle. And then we went to dinner, and we were at dinner, and I was, as a 7-year-old, when you build a sandcastle, like, it's been a good day. Like, that doesn't get much better than that for a 7-year-old. That's a good day. So I was having a good time, and I was telling my older sisters, they're 5 years older and 6 years older than me, and I was telling them about how dope my sandcastle was. And I was telling them that, like, you know what, guys, like, honestly, you're probably going to see me on the news tomorrow morning, because they're going to be at my sandcastle being like, look at this crazy sandcastle we built. It's so awesome. And my sisters start laughing at me, and I'm like, why are you guys laughing? Like, I'm an architect. I am like an inventor. I built a whole city of sand. And they're just laughing at me, and I don't understand. And as a 7-year-old, do you guys remember being 7? Does anyone remember? Yeah. You get frustrated kind of easily. I was like, they were laughing at me, and I didn't know why. And I was like, what the heck? Why are you laughing at me? And then my dad, he kind of like was really serious for a minute. You know when your dad like looks at you and he's like, we need to talk. And he was like, and I'm like, oh gosh, what's going on? And he was like, hey, your sandcastle, it's not going to be there tomorrow. And I was like, what do you mean it's not going to be there tomorrow? He's like, well, the way it works on the beach is every day the beach is brand new. And I was like, no, you don't understand. Like, I built an empire, Dad. Like, it's going to be there. And he's like, it's probably not going to be there. And I was like, it's going to be there. So the next morning we get up and I'm like, Dad, we have to go look. And he's like, I don't think we should. Like, this is going to be rough. But we go look anyway, and we get there, and he was right. And my sandcastle was gone. And I don't know if you've ever been to the beach, but in the morning it's like flat and level, and it's like nothing happened the day before. All my sand was just flat and level. And as a 7-year-old, I was heartbroken. I was depressed. It was just a very emotional day for me when I lost my sandcastle. It was a lot for a 7-year-old. I was like, what the heck? I never want to build a sandcastle again if it's just going to be gone the next day. And it was so frustrating. And I don't know if you've ever built a sandcastle. Maybe you have. Maybe you haven't. Maybe you knew it was going to go away, because apparently that's something a lot of people know. This was my first time at the beach. I didn't know that. I was just 7. I've never been there before. So I was kind of heartbroken. And I tell you guys this story, and I bet a lot of you guys, you've probably built a sandcastle, and you're like, yeah, I can imagine that. I remember, maybe you even remember with the first time you found out sandcastles don't last forever. Maybe you were smart and you already knew that, but it's an emotional day. And when I found this out, it was rough. But I tell you guys this because you've probably had a similar experience, or maybe you haven't. Maybe you've never had this sad day where you lost your sandcastle. But either way, you guys can imagine this story, right? You can put yourselves in the shoes. You know what a beach looks like. Even if you've never been there, you can imagine it. You know what it looks like. You know what this is. You guys knew better than I did. You know what a sandcastle is. You can imagine this story. You can kind of put yourself in this story. And even if you've never lived this story, you could put yourself there and you could imagine what it might be like, right? That is what this story kind of does. And that is what a parable is, right? We're talking about parables, which is a weird word. Everybody say the word parables. Parables. Okay, it's kind of fun to say. Say it again. Parables. Okay, we're talking about parables, and what parables are is they're stories, right? Jesus would teach, and one of the ways he would teach a lot of times is he would use parables. He would use stories, right? He would use a very, very realistic life story that people could relate to, right? A lot of them had to do with like farming, because in the first century, they knew about farming. Today, if someone was to teach you a parable, they probably wouldn't talk about farming. They might talk about sandcastles, or they might talk about video games. But if Jesus would have told the first century people about a video game parable, that wouldn't have made any sense to them. So basically, it's a story that he uses to teach something that he's trying to teach. He's got these ideas, and he's trying to communicate them, so he puts them into a story that they can understand, right? It's a story to show what life with God is like. And tonight, we're going to look at just a super brief parable where he talks about a wise and a foolish builder. Okay, he talks about somebody who's wise, somebody who's foolish, and it's a super, just like a couple verses, and we're going to read it together. So before we read it, though, to give you some context, we're going to be in the book of Matthew. So if you have your Bibles, you can start making your way towards Matthew. And what's going on here is Jesus has been teaching. He's been the whole day, he's been teaching about all kinds of things. He's been telling people about how they're the light of the world, about what it looks like to follow Jesus, how they need to love their neighbors, and how they need to pray for their enemies, and all this crazy stuff. It's been like a big time of teaching. It's called the Sermon on the Mount. He's been doing a lot of teaching, and it's like a lot of stuff. And so when he gets to the end, his way to kind of like punctuate his whole teaching and be like, all right, here's my last little thing for you, is he tells this parable, and we're going to read it together tonight. So it'll be up on the screen. There's a lot of words here. There's only 3 that you have to read. So let's go. Here we go. Therefore, this is Jesus talking, by the way. Therefore, everyone who hears these words of mine and puts them into practice is like a... That was pretty good. Man who built his house on the... Nice. The rain came down, the streams rose, and the winds blew and beat against that house. Yet it did not fall, because it had its foundation on the... Nice. But everyone who hears these words of mine and does not put them into practice is like a foolish man who built his house on sand. The rain came down, the streams rose, and the winds blew and beat against that house, and it fell with a great crash. So this is the story Jesus tells to punctuate this whole teaching he's been doing. He tells this parable, right? It's a story. He doesn't actually necessarily know these people who are building these houses. It's a story that he makes up to prove a point, right? There's storms, there's rocks, there's sands, lots of cool things going on, right? We've got some rocks here, we've got some sand here. I couldn't make a cloud to make storms on the stage. That would have been cool, but we can imagine this, right? There's lots of good imagery here. We can imagine what this looks like. There's a storm, and there's a house, and this crazy storm's blowing in. It's like tornado winds and crazy rain. And this house, one stands, one crashes, right? And so he's teaching something through that. So we're going to talk about that. And I'm going to give you guys kind of like the main point for the night, and then we're going to spend the rest of the time breaking this down. But the main thing that I think he's teaching here, and I'm going to tell you guys about it why, is that he's teaching that what you build your life on shows up when storms hit. What you build your life on shows up when storms hit. And we're going to spend a little bit of time breaking this down. But if there's anything for you to remember tonight, it's this right here. What you build your life on shows up when storms hit, okay? So take a picture, write it down, tell your neighbor, whatever you need to do to remember it, okay? So to break it down a little bit, and you can throw the next verse up, which is just the same story again, just because we're going to be talking about it. So if you want to see what I'm talking about, basically, our life represents the house in the story, right? There's two builders. Those represent us, okay? We are the builders. We're either a wise builder or a foolish builder. And we'll get to how we know which one we are later. And we are building a house, right? Imagine you're building a house. You're like Bob the Builder. It's awesome, okay? But your house represents your life, okay? So when he says they're building a house, it represents their life. You're making a life. You're in middle school. You're starting to figure out who you are, what you believe in, what you're going to do. You're building your life, right? And the storms, right, it says the rain came down, the streams rose, the winds blew, and it beat against the house. This storm that he's talking about, that represents when life happens, right? When things happen in our life that aren't always great. And I know you guys know what those things are. You know what that might look like. Maybe it's your friend backstabbing you. Maybe it's your anxiety that you're struggling with. Maybe it's an addiction. Maybe it's your parents having fights or arguments, or maybe you get in trouble from your parents. When life happens, when hard things start coming up in your life, that's what represents the storms, right? When these storms come, one of two things happens, right? We see one of the houses crashes and one of the houses stands, right? One of them stays. And Jesus is comparing the two things, and he tells us about the two different foundations, right? There's the rock, the foundation that's solid, that survives the storm. And then there's the sand, the foundation that doesn't quite make it through the storm. It says the house came down with a great crash, which sounds scary. And you don't want your life to come down with a great crash. That does not sound like a good way to spend your life, right? So we have to figure out, how do we build our lives on the rock of Jesus and his teachings, right? He says in here, everyone who hears these words of mine and puts them into practice is like a wise man who builds his house on the rock. So to build our house on the rock, we have to learn Jesus' teachings, and we have to learn what it means to build our life on Jesus. And oftentimes, it's not easy, right? It's not easy to build your life on Jesus. Sometimes we'll even think like, oh, I think I'm doing this, but then the storms start coming and the foundation starts slipping away like the sand here, and then we realize, oh, maybe I wasn't built on the rock. Maybe I was actually built on sand. It's really confusing sometimes to know what we're building on. So we're going to spend some time just looking at what are we building on in our life, right? What is your foundation like? Because we don't build on the rock necessarily by being perfect. It's not just like if you do everything perfect, you're built on the rock. That's not how you build on the rock, right? If you're just doing things to be a good person and be perfect, that's not actually building on the rock. We build on the rock by trusting Jesus, right? We trust in Jesus' name. We trust that he is the one and only Savior of our world, right? So some questions to ask yourself if you're like, I don't know which one I might be built on. Here's some things that you could think about, and these might be signs that maybe you're built on the sand, right? Maybe you're built on the wrong foundation. So are things of the world where you find your purpose, your pleasure, your validation, right? Do you find your validation in what other people think about you, in the things you achieve, the things you can do on the sports team, or the things you can do in the classroom, or the things you can do on a piano? Do you find your validation in those things or somewhere else, right? Do you care more about the opinion of others than God's opinion? You might be building on the sand then, right? Do you apply what Jesus says, or do you just hear about it at garage or at church and then just kind of forget about it, right? Or do you actually care about it? Another question, what do you do when no one's watching? What kind of things do you do when no one's watching? Right? When you show up to school, do you treat other people with kindness, Or do you treat them by gossiping about them, by saying bad things about them, from maybe by making fun of kids who you don't like or who aren't a part of your friend group? How do you treat other people, right? These are questions that if you ask yourself and you look at yourself, these might be signs that you're building on the wrong things, right? That you're putting your foundation in the sand instead of on the rock, right? If we're building on the rock, we don't just build on the rock, like I said, to just be good people. We don't just do this because we're like, oh, I want to make good decisions and be a good person. Those are good things, but the foundation of the rock is not just making good choices. The foundation of the rock is believing in Jesus, trusting in his death and resurrection. We talked about that a lot in our last series. What does it mean to trust in his death and resurrection, right? We talked about it at Easter. What does it mean to have joy in the resurrection? We talked about that. And when we believe in Jesus, when we trust that he is who he says he is, that he is this God that came to earth as a man, but 100% God, and he died on the cross and he resurrected. When we say, yes, I believe in you, Jesus, I want to put my faith and trust in you, that is how you build on the foundation, right? So are we building on the foundation that is solid, right? The rock, right? This rock's not going anywhere. If there was some water on here, it wouldn't do anything to the rock. It'd be fine. If there was some wind, it wouldn't go anywhere. The sand, different story, right? If you've ever been around sand when it gets windy, it's miserable because it's just blowing all over the place. But we are building on the eternal life of Jesus. So when you ask yourself those things, when you start to decide, hey, I want to go from building on the sand that doesn't really, last, just kind of fades away, I want to go from building on that to actually building on the rock. Then when you're building on the rock, some things are going to change a little bit. Some things about you might start to change, and that's where we see those choices that maybe come into play. It's not necessarily the foundation, but when we have this foundation, we live a little bit differently, right? We start seeking after Jesus with the things we do. We start pursuing ways that of his ways over our own ways, right? We don't put oftentimes we put what we want first, but when we're having Jesus as our foundation, we put what he says first, right? Like he said in that verse, he said to pursue the things that he was teaching on, right? We pursue serving others over serving ourselves, right? We might seek freedom from addictions and things that we know are holding us back. If we're built on the foundation, we're going to want to get free from those things. We might share with others the struggles we have in our lives, right? If we're struggling with anxiety or depression, or we have hard time making friends at school, we might share those with the people around us, or the people at church, your community with Christ. You're going to share with those people. Because you see, something that the story says is the storm hits both houses, right? It's not like if you build on the foundation of Jesus, no storms come. The storms are still going to hit even if your foundation is in Jesus. But when those storms hit, something different happens, right? And I know that you guys know storms will come. If you guys were here last week, we did What's on Your Mind, and you guys were sharing about some of the storms you guys are going through in your lives. We were hearing about people who've had family members die, right? We were hearing about people who are seeking healing and haven't got it. We heard about people who are struggling with addictions, people who are struggling with their mental health, people who are being bullied at school. You guys know what the storms in life are like, right? You've been through them. You see them. So the question is, what does it look like when those storms come, right? And when we're built on the rock, we face those storms differently, right? We're still going to get hit by the storms. Hard things are still going to happen. But what we can say when we're here, this is something that we've said here at Garage before, but it's something that we can all be reminded of, is when these storms hit, we remind ourselves that I have a God who is bigger than those storms, right? I have a God who is bigger than my anxiety. I have a God who is bigger than being bullied. You have a God who is bigger than any sickness or illness or divorce or anything that may be going on in your life. You fill in the blank. You have a God who is bigger than blank. Whatever that storm is, when we are built on the rock, we remind ourselves, hey, things might be hard right now, but I have a God who is bigger than that. He's bigger than the struggles we have, right? So we can have hope. We have hope in Jesus. We have hope in Jesus because he is a solid foundation. This is not going anywhere when things get hard. This is here for you. Jesus does not leave you when things are hard, compared to when we're built on the sand, right? Maybe sometimes it's like, okay, it's here, and then things keep getting harder and harder, and eventually all the sand is gone, and anything you're built on, if it's not the rock of Jesus, it's going to fail you, right? Sometimes it takes a day, sometimes it takes months, but it's going to fail you. It's going to fall out. And like that story said, it's going to crash down around you. But his foundation is more solid. And you see, Jesus didn't just tell us this and then never mention it again. This is a big teaching. He's build your life on the rock. This is a big deal. He actually tells us later, there's another verse we're going to check out in John, and he tells us, It'll be up there. He says, in this world, you will have trouble, right? Jesus isn't lying to us. He's not going to tell us like, hey, everything's going to be perfect and great, right? Last weekend, you guys were asking about why do bad things happen, right? Jesus, he doesn't say that bad things aren't going to happen. He tells us straight up. He says, this world is going to be hard. There's going to be storms. You're going to have trouble. But the beautiful thing is the verse doesn't end there. It goes on in the next half of the verse says, but take heart, right? This is Jesus talking. He says, take heart, have hope. I have overcome the world. He says, even when those troubles come, you can have hope because I have overcome the world. I am the rock. I'm not going anywhere. I'm there with you in the storms. I am there with you. You have a God who is bigger than any storm you may be going through. So whatever you are going through, remind yourself, you have a God who is bigger than that. Okay? He is there with you in those storms. Jesus has already won. He says, I have already overcome the world. He's already overcome everything, right? We have already won if we have put our faith in him because we will be with him for eternity, right? And in heaven, there are no more storms. There are no more tears. There are no more dark days. There are no more hard days, no more crying, no more pain, no more suffering because he has overcome the world. And if we build our life on that truth, that will never fail us. That will be there for us. And tonight, we're going to close out here in a worship song, and it's a worship song that we maybe haven't done here in a while, or maybe not ever. I'm not sure. I'm sure it's a song you guys are familiar with, but it's this song, and it's got some lines in it that really, really tie into this well. One of the lines in there is that Christ is my firm foundation, the rock on which I stand, right? Christ is a solid foundation, something to build a life on, right? It says that when everything around me is shaking, when storms are coming in, I've never been more glad that I put my faith in Jesus. So that's what I want to ask you guys tonight. Can you say that? Can you say, I've never been more glad that I'm building my life on the rock of Jesus? Because he is a firm foundation. He is what is going to be there for us in the storm. So when we're getting into worship here in a minute, I want you guys to maybe take some time. Maybe if you've never heard this song and you're like, I don't really know how to sing it because I've never heard it, maybe just sit back and let Jenna sing it over you guys and just kind of read the words and reflect on them. Maybe you find some space to yourself where you can worship on your own and just reflect on what is your foundation in life. Maybe come up to the front with your friends and worship together, whatever you want to do. But I want you guys to take this moment to really worship God and to really ask yourself, what are you building your life on? Are you building your life on the rock of Jesus, something that will be there for you, that's consistent, that's solid, that's hopeful? Or are you building your life on the sand, which is here in a moment and gone the next? So let's pray together, and then let's get into this song. Jesus, thank you for being a solid foundation, for being a God who is there for us, a God who helps us when we are in the storms, who when we're going through these hard things, you're always right there with us. You're not leaving us alone in these storms, but you're there in them with us. Thank you for being a God that when we're having a hard time and we're saying, God, I'm trying to build my life on you, but I don't know, it's hard right now. I don't know if I'm doing it right, that you are right there with us. You say, don't worry, just keep coming back to me. Keep turning back to me, and you will be there for us each and every time. God, I pray over everyone in this room right now as we look at our lives and we ask ourselves what we're building our lives on, that you would just help us to build our lives on you, to build our lives on following you and trusting you and knowing you. God, just teach us how to follow you. We pray this all, and everybody said,
Christ is my firm foundation, the rock on which I stand when everything around me is shaking. I've never been more glad that I put my faith in Jesus, 'cause he's never let me down. He's faithful through generations. Rain came, wind blew, my house was built on you, and I'm safe with you. I'm gonna make it through. Sing, rain came, and rain came, wind blew, but my house was built on you, and I'm safe with you. I'm gonna make it through. Yeah, I'm gonna make it through. 'Cause I'm standing strong on you. Yeah, I'm gonna make it through. 'Cause my house was built on, and Christ is my firm foundation, the rock on which I stand when everything around me is shaking. Oh, I've never been more glad that I put my faith in Jesus, and He's never let me down. He's faithful through generations. So why would He fail now? He won't. No, He won't. He won't fail. He won't fail. He won't.
Guys, I hope you believe that He will not fail you, because He will not. Build your lives on the foundation of Jesus. Guys, we hope you guys have a great night. We say this every week because we mean it. You are loved and prayed for, and you are accepted here at Garage, just as you are. Dudes, I hope to see you on Friday for Man Night. I hope to see the rest of you guys next Wednesday as we continue our series. See you guys next time. If you want to get baptized, come talk to me.
Son, Holy Father, never thought He really got us. I guess He just forgot that God works everything for better.